My name is Lauren Hooker, and I'm so excited to have you joining in. I know it takes just a few minutes for everybody to filter in, so feel free to go ahead and use that comment section in the side and let me know if you can hear me, if you can see me, if everything is okay on your end before we go ahead and get started. In the meantime, for those of you who don't know who I am, my name is Lauren Hooker, and I'm the graphic designer and blogger behind Ellen Company, which is a blogging, business, and design resource for creative entrepreneurs. I started Ellen Company, it's almost been 2 years, coming up on the 2-year mark. And when I first started, I was focusing mainly on design, and I really struggled to come across really great resources that could help me start my online business. And so when I started doing my research, glad that you all can see me. When I started doing my research, I just started sharing what I was learning with other people through my blog, started to try to be more strategic about things, and then was just very transparent with what I was learning, whether it was Squarespace or content marketing or anything that ran the gamut. So my goal for these L chats each week is to have just an informal gathering, nothing too formal. We took it off of Twitter and into here so that we could really dive deep into topics on business, blogging, and design to help you run a successful, creative online business. So I'm so excited to have you join in. And while I love teaching and the majority of this time will be me teaching, I really want it to be a two-way conversation that makes it a lot more fun for both of us. So I would love for you to use the comment feature just to give me feedback throughout, to get to know other people who are tuning in too. This is a great networking opportunity, and also for the Q&A at the end. So if you have questions as we go along and you're afraid you'll forget them by the time the Q&A starts in, feel free to start leaving those questions in the comment section. And also, we realized this last week that sometimes the comment section doesn't allow you to have really long comments or maybe leave URLs or links. So I created a Slack group. For those of you who are unfamiliar with Slack, it's a really great forum. It's just a website. You have to be invited to the group in order to join it. And so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you, show you what it looks like. Go ahead and get that up and running so that you can leave comments on there. And then hopefully you can see my screen. Okay, here it is. Here's the invitation page. You can enter your email address in here. The URL is lchat.herokuapp. It's HEROKUAPP.com. And I'll go ahead and put the link into our comments so that you can go ahead and receive an invitation. Here we go. Hey, Crystal and Tiana. Good to see you all in here. So once you get an invitation, you'll come to our LChat forum. And just quickly, just to show you around, there are different channels in here. One is just a general channel that everyone can access. You can access all of these actually. The other one is Find Focus, and this is where I included the slides from last week. That's a hilarious picture and still frame. I apologize for that. But this is where we can talk about finding your focus. We talked a lot about it within the general channel last week. And then this week I created one for color palette. So feel free to join the group. Go ahead and introduce yourself, whether it's in the general channel or in the color palette channel, and start leaving questions there too. Just in case the comment section doesn't work out quite as well tonight. So hopefully, get us back to where we were before. There we go. Hopefully that'll be a great resource for you, not only for this time together, but also throughout the week. So what I'm really hoping is that it becomes more of a community and a resource and a conversation for you throughout the week. I'll jump in every now and then. Last week, I know a lot of people were jumping in and just starting conversations with each other, sharing their work, going to each other's websites. It was awesome. So feel free to use it throughout the week too. They also have a mobile app. So there we go. With that said, I'm going to go ahead and jump in tonight to how to choose a color palette for your brand. And I'll go ahead and share my screen with you one more time so that you can see the slides. All right. Jump in here, leave that chat window open just in case. Better safe than sorry. All right. So, how to choose a color palette for your brand. So, color has a very large impact on the tone of a brand. Those of you who already have a business are realizing this already, and that's probably why you are in this chat, because realizing that color has a large impact and actually putting together a color palette for your brand are two very different things. Color is one of the first things that you recognize about a brand, and it actually increases brand recognition by 80%. So if you think of some popular brands, and I'm going to throw some out there, think of the first colors that pop to your mind. Coca-Cola. You automatically think of that bright red of their brand. That's strong brand recognition. If you think about Christmas, you usually think about red and green and white. If you think about Lowe's, you might think of blue, or Home Depot, you think of orange. And also for schools and football teams, it's football season. Every time I see maroon and orange, I get really excited because I went to Virginia Tech and I'm a huge Hokie fan. So any time that you see the colors of your schools, it kind of brings about that emotional response too. So color is a powerful communication tool, especially for first impressions, which is what branding is really tailored to, is leaving a positive first impression on someone the first time that they interact with your brand, the first time that they see it. It's huge in branding. Color is huge. It's actually 60% of people will decide whether or not they're attracted to a message based on color alone. So you have a really great opportunity with color to be sending the right message to your audience, to be attracting the right kind of customers and clients, or potential customers and clients who could purchase from you down the road. So first, in tonight's LChat, I'm going to take you into some color psychology first to really understand what colors demonstrate or give off certain emotions. So we're going to go through the psychology of color, and then we're going to talk about gathering color inspiration, and then how to create a distinct color palette that sets your brand apart. So first, the psychology of color. I'm going to walk through each one with you, and you probably already subconsciously understand these colors. There might be some aha moments as I go through these. I really love studying color psychology, and I hope that you'll enjoy this part too. So for yellow, yellow is the color of positivity, happiness, and warmth. We usually, when we see yellow, we think of joy and sunshine. It's attention grabbing. It usually catches your attention first when it's mixed with other colors. And that's why a lot of taxis are yellow, because it attracts your attention, catches your attention. It also can represent caution. So if you think yield signs, if you think traffic lights, the yellow light on the traffic light is caution, warning you to slow down. It grabs your attention. Men perceive yellow as being lighthearted and childish, so you don't often see yellow in brands that whose ideal audience is men or centered around men. You don't see it in men's clothing brands. You don't see it very often within, home department stores like Home Depot and Lowe's and that sort of thing. However, with the cat logo that we see here, you usually think that's more men focused, but that's also more of that warning and caution and construction for yellow. It also isn't seen on expensive products very often, or expensive high-end brands, because it is so lighthearted and childish. It's also viewed as being spontaneous and unstable. So you might see it a lot in children's brands. It's also said to increase appetite and hunger. So you see it a lot for restaurant branding too. And of course, the yellow arches with McDonald's, that makes sense. So some common associations with yellow include caution, cheerfulness, cowardice, curiosity, happiness, joy, playfulness, positivity, sunshine, and warmth. Next, we're going to look at blue. Blue is actually the most commonly used color for brands. And after we go through the qualities of blue and the characteristics of blue, that will make more sense. It's perceived as trustworthy, loyal, dependable, and serene. It's a popular color for financial institutions for that very reason. And if you think of some of the biggest banks like IBM and Citibank, Bank of America, Chase, that makes sense. They want to be known as trustworthy. You're trusting them with your money. So they want to let you know that they're stable and secure. It's also used for social media sites. If you think about Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn, all of them tend to use blue because of that dependable, trustworthy, those characteristics. It's also a popular color for promoting products that are related to cleanliness, like water purification filters and detergents. It's used often for air and sky services and products like airlines and air conditioners. And of course, it's related to water and sea. So cruise lines, bottled water often use blue within their branding. It's actually said to suppress appetite, so you don't see it very often for restaurant branding. And studies have shown that men are drawn to blue, which makes sense. We usually think of blue as a more masculine color and pink and red as more feminine colors. So some common associations with blue include authority, calmness, confidence, dignity, loyalty, success, security, serenity, and trustworthiness. Next is green. When you think of green, you usually think of nature, growth, freshness, serenity, and healing. It has a strong emotional correspondence to safety and balance as well. Darker greens are closely related to money and banking and wealth, and lighter greens usually have a calming effect. So that's important to note too. Sometimes colors based on their tones and shades can evoke different feelings and emotions within people. So if you have a dark green like the Starbucks or Whole Foods, you normally think more of nature and freshness. And if you think of light greens and more minty greens, you think of it being fresh, kind of serene. So that's important to keep in mind as you're choosing brand colors as well. Some common associations with green include freshness, harmony, health, eco-friendliness, healing, inexperience, money, and nature. Next is always been my favorite color. It's purple, and it's closely associated with royalty, nobility, luxury, and extravagance. Purple dyes back in the old times were very rare, and so it was a sign of nobility if you wore purple. It's a rare color in nature as well, so many relate it to creativity and mystery, which explains the sci-fi logo there and why they chose purple. It also is said to stir up feelings of nostalgia, which makes sense for Hallmark and why they would choose purple for their branding as well. Some common associations also include fantasy, mystery, nobility, royalty, and sophistication. Next is red. Red is the color of passion, fire, blood. It's often associated with energy, war, danger, and power, but it's also associated with passion, desire, and love. It's emotionally intense and emotionally charged color. It has a very high visibility. It's just a fun fact that red cars get pulled over much more often than any other cars due to its high visibility. And it's often used to catch a viewer's attention. So a lot of businesses and marketers in particular use red for buy now buttons and that sort of thing. You also think of red tag clearance sales because red grabs your attention. It's also been known to raise people's blood pressure and stimulate appetite. So that's why it's frequently used in the food industry for brands like Nabisco, Kellogg's, Frito-Lay, Heinz, McDonald's, and Chick-fil-A. So other common associations include action, adventure, aggression, danger, drive, energy, excitement, passion, and vigor. So red is a very bold color for brands. Next up is orange. It's a little less intense than red, but it still packs a lot of punch and grabs your attention. It's energetic and warm. And because it has the mix of red and yellow, It's associated with joy, sunshine, and playfulness as well. So you often find it used in logos to stimulate emotions or even appetites, like we talked about with red and yellow. And some common associations with orange include creativity, enthusiasm, lightheartedness, affordability, and youth. We have a couple more to go through. I hope as we're going through these that you're finding some colors that might work well for you and for your brand. Pink is a feminine color. That should be no surprise. It usually stirs up feelings of innocence and delicateness. However, bright and vibrant shades of pink often evoke a bold and modern appeal, which is probably why T-Mobile chose it. Overall, it's known for being friendly and lighthearted and feminine. Common associations also include gratitude, romance, gentleness, innocence, softness, and appreciation. This is where shades also come into play. If you think of light pinks, you normally think of a very soft feel, a little bit more not as bright and vibrant, but a little bit more romantic. And if you think of darker shades of pink too, just depends on different tones and the different emotions that you want to evoke within your audience and the kind of people that you want to attract. Brown, we don't see as often in logos, but I'm sure you recognize at least two of these brands on here for UPS and M&M. Brown indicates nature and utility, and it's often used in logos related to construction and law due to its simplicity, warmth, and neutrality. So some common associations with brown include depth, earthiness, roughness, richness, simplicity, seriousness, subtlety, and utility. So brown doesn't usually stand out very much, but it makes sense for M&M in particular because it makes you think of chocolate. For the Anjou bakery, usually brown is associated with baked goods, bread. So that's probably why they chose brown. But you can see that it doesn't stand out as much as some of the other brands that we've gone over and other colors that we've gone over. And the last one is black. Black represents power, elegance, and authority. It's often associated with intelligence, but it's also associated with evil and grieving as well. So it's a serious color that evokes very strong emotions. Common associations include authority, class, distinction, formality, mystery, which is probably why the 007 James Bond logo chose black, secrecy, seriousness, elegance, and tradition. So a lot of times black logos are just very traditional, streamlined, a little more sophisticated logos if you choose black. So now that we've gone over some color associations, this will help you as we continue to build a color palette and help you really think through the colors that you're choosing and not just choosing them because they look nice, but also being intentional about which colors you're choosing so that you can really tap into people's emotions and more importantly, just draw in the clientele who you want to work with and your ideal client and customer. So, as I mentioned just a moment ago too, tones, tints, and shades are also very important in the colors that you choose for your brand. Tones are created by adding black and white to pure colors. So often you'll hear someone say that a color needs to be toned down, and they're meaning that it's too intense and they want to drop the level of intensity. So you can see here that we started under the tone section, we started with a really bright pink, a very vibrant color. No black or white has been added to it. And then as we tone it down and add black and even a little bit of white sometimes, it just tones down that hue so that it's not so bright and vibrant. And you can see how even just one step down, it really affects that color. It's not as bright, it's a little bit more subdued and could fit better for her brand. You can also change things up with tints, which is just adding white to a color. So as you add white, it gets lighter and lighter. And then shades are when you add black to a color. So Again, it makes it a little less vibrant. It's not as soft as adding white to it. Adding white usually makes it a little bit more feminine. Adding black can often make it seem a little bit more masculine. So that's something to keep in mind as you're choosing colors for your brand as well. So now that we have all of this in mind, I'm going to move to the next step, which is usually the hardest, is gathering color inspiration. So knowing all of these colors now, it might be a little hard to know exactly where to start. How do you start with color? Where do you gather inspiration? How do you even begin to think about and refine a color palette for your brand? And I have a couple different places that I gather color inspiration for my client projects and also for the Owen Company brand. And the first is through Pinterest. What did people do before Pinterest? It's a great visual resource that allows you to pull in images. And actually, for each and every client project or design project, I usually go in and create a secret Pinterest board and just start pulling in images that evoke the feelings that I want to evoke within a brand, that align with that ideal customer that I'm trying to help my client attract. And so, for example, I'm just going to run through a couple, and hopefully this will help you in starting to think through the colors for your brand if you haven't come up with a color palette yet, or refine your color palette if you already have one and you're hoping to make tweaks to it. So this Pinterest board was for one of my clients. She was a wedding photographer, and seeing the subject matter in her board, that kind of makes sense. We see cakes and invitations and flowers. You see really soft pastels. You see the peachy pinks and some soft blues. And so when she was pulling together photos, I think she was a little intentional about the photos or the colors that she wanted. But I started to look through the board and just look for similarities in the colors in the board, especially in the photos that were really working. And I started to pull them together and consider the colors. So for the peach, I was thinking that would work great for the kind of bride she's hoping to attract, who wants a high-end wedding, soft, romantic, feminine. So the peachy pink works really well. Again, if you think back to pink, pink is a feminine color. By adding white and not having it a vibrant pink, it's also toning it down and making it a little bit softer. For the blue, it's a little fresher, and it's also a cooler color, so it contrasts with that warmer pink, and we'll go over that in just a second. But you can start to see how some of the images that you might be choosing can start to come together and create a color palette. So I would recommend starting there even. Pull together images that when you see them, you think that really is the direction I want to head in my brand. That's how I want to make people feel when they see my brand, is the same way I'm feeling when I'm seeing this photo, and start to bring in inspiration that way. And once I do that, I create an inspiration board, and this is where I really start to think through color. So this might be a little bit easier to view. You can see these just really soft peachy pinks here in the shoes, in the ribbon on this bouquet, even the peachy pinks in this photo here, and just subtle touches even with her arm and the skin tones. So we chose that peachy pink. You can also see some dark browns in these photos. So you see the brown here and in the hair, even in the small little details in this image with the bride. So we pulled in that dark brown to give it that rich warmth, that stability. It's not loud and flashy. It's kind of more subdued, and it's really dark and almost black and gray, which gives it that more sophisticated feel. The blue adds some freshness, and again, that copper is that same soft brown. And again, going back to that blue too, not only is it fresh, but we toned it down. It's not a vibrant color. It's still soft and romantic. So you can tell how, as we were coming up with the color palette, we were really intentional about what the colors evoked, what feelings they evoked, and if her ideal bride that she wanted to work with would be attracted to these colors, think that this is beautiful and a great visual direction. So it's a good starting point. This one goes to show you that even if you have a bunch of different colors on your board, or some different visual directions here, that you can somehow pull it together and even sort through it all to create a really lovely color palette, a distinct color palette for your brand. This is another wedding photographer, but instead of in Texas and trying to attract a really high-end bride and that romantic Southern bride, this one's a little bit more vibrant. She has more contrast in her photos. She is based out of Virginia and in a really small town. So her brand is going to look a little bit different. As I looked through her brand, she was really into texture, and you can see that through kind of the woven bracelet here. Everything else on the board was kind of imperfect. It had this illustrated, hand-drawn appeal to it. She did have a lot of green, maybe not so much this bright, rich green. It usually had a little more yellow to it, like this jacket in here. You can see some really dark black colors, a lot of contrast, and some tans. So I started to see these similarities. I started to pick them out, the brown, the green, the gray, the black, and we came up with this inspiration board. This would attract her ideal client in the fact that it's just very subdued, a lot of contrast. She had a lot of outdoor engagement photos, so we picked up that green to really complement it, and we toned it down just a little bit with the soft light green so that it wouldn't take away from her photos so much. But again, we just kept it very simple and pulled from those colors in her inspiration board. We'll look at a couple more. This one was for a calligrapher and a hand letterer. She does a lot of stationery. She has a really fun style. And so the brides and clients that she would attract with her business would be those who are really fun and looking for some character. Maybe not as sophisticated and high end as the photographer that we looked at first, with those soft blues and soft peaches and browns. But this one's a little bit more vibrant. We have some blues. We have some even just orangey colors in there. So we sorted through it all, and I looked for the similarities there. And this was the board we came up with. I saw some really fun, bright yellows that were a little bit more lively and playful, like we talked about just a moment ago with yellow and how it's a playful color. It catches your attention. We have the pink because we're going for a more feminine audience. We're going still geared toward brides and usually women buying stationery. We have a dark blue that's just pairs as a nice neutral. It's dark. Again, it's stable. And then the lighter blue, which is fresh. So you can see how it's all sort of coming together, and we're picking colors from the board. And then this last one is very different. It has a lot of rich colors, a lot of fall colors. We have the dark purples, even some reds. It has a lot of tones. You don't see very bright and vibrant colors. You see a lot of black added to all of these colors within these photos. It's kind of just soft, not as soft, but romantic, luxurious. The client that I was working with is also a stationer. She does wedding invitations and calligraphy, but she's going toward a very romantic bride, very different than the last one we looked at with the vibrant yellows. This one, we kept the photos just very toned down. You can see that I added black and added some white as well. So we don't have those vibrant colors. They're more subdued, and brought in a little of that peachy pink as well that we see in the onions and some of the stationery, and even within the cake as well. So just looking for color similarities and picking them out of those inspirational photos. So Pinterest is a great place to look and just gain inspiration for color. Look for those similarities of what you're attracted to, but always be thinking first and foremost about your audience and whether they would be attracted to these photos too. Do some research. Ask people within your ideal audience if they would be attracted to those colors. It's always helpful to get as much feedback and do as much research as possible. So you can also, another great resource is Adobe Color CC. If you go to the URL color.adobe.com, you can start to use the color wheel and move these little dots around, and just it'll help you come up with a color palette. So we'll go over this more in just a second with the different kinds of color palettes that you can create. But right now, this is an analogous color palette. All of these colors are coming from one section of the color wheels. They're all closely related. You can move those around. There's also a section called Explore, which might even be even more helpful. You can go in there and see themes and color palettes that have already been created and just get ideas from there. So this is a great resource. It's really fun if you love color. It's really fun to go and just play around on this site. Another great one is DESIGNSPIRATION.net. And again, I'll put these on the Slack forum and provide these resources for you there with links. And I'm also recording this too if you want to refer to it later. DESIGNSPIRATION is great because you can go and search by color. So I don't know if you can see it very well right here, but up at the top it says color. If you click it, this huge array of colors will pop up. You can choose a color and just scan some fun graphics that have been created using that main color. And they usually use secondary colors in there too, so you might see some fun color pairs and get some inspiration that way. Be forewarned, you could spend, or if you're like me, you could spend hours on this site. It gets a little addicting. So if you're really struggling with where even to start in choosing a color palette, Pinterest is a great resource, and these sites are also great resources as well. So with that being said, I'm going to jump into how to pull those colors together, what you should really be looking for in creating a color palette, and have an idea of which colors will help you convey the right message to your audience. So we're going to focus on how to create balance, unity, and distinction in your color palette. Keep in mind too that this process, even though I have steps and kind of a start and an end to this process, you might need to jump around in creating your color palette. You might get here and realize you need to bring in another color or get rid of some colors, and that's okay. Be open to revising your color palette, and usually it even takes me some jumping around between these steps to really refine it and get it just right. So the first step is to pull colors from your inspiration board. So what I usually do is I see that inspiration board, even though I have some color blocks in there, I go in there and I really try to find 6 colors. That's normally where I start. I can always get rid of some. Usually don't bring too many more on than 6. But even in some of those color palettes where I only had the gray and the green, even bringing in some dark grays, light grays, dark green, light green, you can still find the colors within your board. Within Adobe Illustrator, which is the program that I use all the time, there's a little eyedropper tool in Adobe Illustrator. And so I just go in with the eyedropper to my inspiration board and just pick colors with that eyedropper tool. So you can see I pulled the yellow, I pulled the pink and the blue, I pulled the navy blue, which are all standout colors here, but I also wanted a light neutral color. So I picked up on just this kind of tannish gray color there that was in the background of a lot of these photos, also in the necklace here, just to create some balance to where it wasn't all these vibrant, loud colors. And there's also a little bit of purple here in this pattern that I thought could be a really nice addition as well. So go into your inspiration board and start choosing colors and really figuring out what makes that inspiration board work, and what colors are present within your board. Then determine the current color combination that you have. There's 3 different color combinations that you probably have once you create your Pinterest board and your inspiration board. And the first is monochromatic. Monochromatic works with one color with various tints and shades of that color. So monochromatic palettes are often very soft and subtle. They're very subdued. They aren't very loud. They don't attract your attention so much, but they're more soft and maybe even a little bit more romantic depending on what color you're using. So with this, you can see that this is the more vibrant blue that we haven't added too much black or white to, but then as we add black, we get these darker values, and as we add white, we get these lighter values, and that's our monochromatic palette. We haven't added any other colors, we haven't mixed colors, we're just working with one color and adding black and adding white to it with different tones and shades. So they can often make a brand appear washed out, like I said, because they lack some of that contrast that's involved when you bring in other colors. And so if you have a monochromatic palette, you might consider bringing in at least one other color just to give it some life and personality. If you're looking for something that's very understated though, and you're intentional about choosing a monochromatic palette, then go for it. There are instances where it really works, like for Canary Gray. They just used black and white and gray. And you can see their website. It's very classy and very sophisticated, but they don't have those pops of color. They rely a lot on hierarchy and sizes to call attention to things on their website. So you can do it and it can work really well, but just make sure that you're being very intentional with those monochromatic palettes if you choose to go that route. The next one is an analogous palette, and these include colors that sit next to each other on the color wheel. So they're usually related. It's almost like a family of colors, and they're either all warm colors or all cool colors normally because they're sitting next to each other on the color wheel. So I'm going to step back some slides, bear with me. We see the color wheel here. This was an analogous palette because it's all coming from this one side of the color wheel. So if you move these and take any other like pizza slice from this color wheel, that would be your analogous palette. So a lot of times with blues and greens, that would be a cooler color palette. If you have oranges and reds and yellows, that's a warmer color palette. So that's called analogous. It's very visually pleasing, and like I said, it would include all cool colors or warm colors. So for example, this brand primarily uses analogous colors, the orange, pink, purple. They're all warm colors from that same side of the color wheel, and it's a little more relaxed than most analogous palettes because it also brings in that black. So it brings in a neutral just to create a little bit more contrast there, and it really works for this brand. So if you look at your Pinterest board or your inspiration board and the colors that you've already chosen, and you see that it's an analogous palette, and you're going for something that's a little bit more relaxed and subdued, an analogous palette could work really well for you. It also depends on if you're using the actual like bright color, the bright hue, and if you're adding black or white to it, that can really make a difference in analogous palettes too. And then there's one more, and it's the one I normally am drawn to the most because it includes a lot of contrast, but complementary colors are opposite each other on the color wheel usually. So a complementary palette usually has both warm colors and cool colors to balance each other out. So you can see that we have the warmer colors of the pinks here, and then we have a little bit cooler with the greens as well. So they're a little bit more complementary and balanced. They're vibrant. Usually complementary palettes are vibrant and dimensional because they have that contrast, and they're usually a little bit more distinct, and they help a brand really stand out. So for example, this brand includes both cool colors, those greens, almost that minty greenish blue, and then the warm colors of that peach and orange. So there's really great contrast there. It makes it a really fun palette. It helps it stand out, but it also creates a really nice balance. So when you're thinking through your brand colors, if you have an analogous palette and you want to just add a little bit more vibrancy to it, you might add a color from the opposite side of the color wheel. So some typical complements are green and red. Those are complementary colors. They're right across from each other on the color wheel. You have purple and yellow, which are right across from each other on the color wheel. And then you also have blue, and it's leaving me right now. Blue and orange, that's what it is. Maybe because it's UVA colors, and their tech fans don't really love UVA so much. But if you're a UVA fan, that's totally fine. But blue and orange are complementary colors. And they sit opposite each other on the color wheel. So those are some things to keep in mind with a complementary color palette. So once you've figured out which color palette you're going to go with, now you need to think about including both light and dark tones. This is so important, and I see a lot of people who are just coming into the design field, especially when they're creating brands, really miss out on this important piece of contrast. It's really easy to go toward mid-tone colors, but forget about including really dark neutrals and some lighter more neutral colors as well. So you want your palette to have a good mix of light and dark colors and midtones as well. So you see with each of these different color palettes, we have both dark colors and light colors and some colors in between. And that's why they really work. It creates that contrast. If you have the darker colors, usually for text, it makes it very legible and easy to read, especially within a logo. And if you have the lighter colors, it's usually really great for background colors, more subtle colors. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. So we have the really dark blue right here. We have about 4 midtones and then a really light blue as well. We have the darker, richer, almost raspberry red. And then we have some midtones that are a little bit more vibrant. And then we have a soft pink there for that analogous palette. And even for the complementary palette, we have a really dark, almost navy blue, almost black. We have some midtones here with the greens and the pinks and that olive gray color. And then we have this light pink as well. So no matter what kind of color palette you have, whether it's monochromatic, analogous, or complementary, really try to think about having a dark, almost neutral color and a light color and some colors in there that are midtones to create that contrast and that balance within your color palette for your brand. And then lastly, choose your dominant colors within your palette and then some accent colors. So for this brand, we chose this dark blue and the light blue for the Prairie Letter Shop brand. And then for some accent colors that we brought in just through her website and other collateral items, and also through things like blog graphics. We use those accent colors as kind of a secondary palette, but choose at least 2 dominant colors. Usually the strongest brands only work with 2 colors, and then they use some accent colors in those collateral items and secondary items. But for your logo, usually no more than 2. Unless there's a really good reason, but that's normally a rule of thumb. So having that really dark color and the midtones and then the light colors here is really helpful for running the gamut and creating that balance and that contrast. So that is the end of the presentation, and we're going to spend the rest of the time doing a Q&A. So if you have questions, I'm going to stop screen sharing. Feel free to use the comment section off to the side of your screen, and you can also use the Slack forum too. I'll be checking there just in case. And again, if you're tuning in a little bit later and you missed the first part, the Slack forum is a way for you and I to interact throughout the week, you and everyone joining in here to interact throughout the week, to leave questions, to leave feedback, especially within this color palette LChat. It'd be really fun to see the color palettes you choose, to receive feedback on them. I think other people in the class would appreciate your feedback on them too, but I love jumping in and saying, hey, have you thought about adding in this color or taking this color out, or making that color a little bit darker? So I'm happy to give feedback too. The way that you can ask for an invitation for that Slack forum is, I'll bring it back up here. It is lchat.heroku app, I think is how you say it, HEROKUAPP.com. And again, I'll put that link in the comments one more time. It'll send you an invitation. You can set up your Slack account, and then you can log into our Slack forum. And it'll take you to the general page. Awesome. I see that more of you have joined, which makes me really happy. There are different channels here on the side. And so I set up one for color palette. So if you have questions, feel free to ask them in there or ask them in the sidebar as well. All right, so I'm going to start scrolling through. Great. So, oh no, slides were a little fuzzy. I apologize. I'm going to send out these slides too. I'm going to put them in the LChat forum in our Slack group, and then I'll also email them out if that would be easy too. Just let me know your feedback. I also know there's a little bit of a lag in the time, so I'll account for that as well. But if you have any questions about color palette, about tones, if you have, a certain color palette right now, if you have a question about the number of colors that you should include, I know I covered a lot in this one, so I'm happy to answer your questions, and I'll switch back and forth between them. I just realized I wasn't sharing my screen when I was telling you about the LChat group, so let me go back to that really quickly and show you that. Let's see here. Share. All right. So here's that LChat group. lchat.herokuapp.com. Go ahead and leave it in the comments. Oh, good. Lauren said you can change the webinar to high resolution at the bottom if that helps. So that might be helpful for you as well. Thank you, Lauren. I appreciate that. I just dropped the link for the invitation to the Slack group in there. This is what it looks like. I'm on the color palette one right now. This is what the general one looks like. This is awesome. Okay, Paper Kate Design just left one. So a mood board. Missing some bright. Let's take a look at it. Great, so it looks like there's a lot of grays in here. I see some similarities with this peachy melon color and even some of those warmer peachy colors here and here as well. So you might make this color down here more of that peachy color just to add a little bit more pop. Again, I don't know who your ideal audience is, so that that might change things up a little bit too, but just from a first impression. I also see some of this lighter green, almost a minty green in the blue, and I see little pops of it in this photo as well. So you might even bring in that lighter blue in your board as well. And the blue and the melon could be a really nice contrast with each other. I think the really dark blacks are working almost that navy color. And so you can see how that color palette's starting to come together as well. I also see a little bit of like a brownish tan just in this photo, in the, that, what is the word I'm looking for? Paper bag almost color here and in the wood tones as well. So that could bring in a little more vibrancy to your mood board. But I love this. Thank you for sharing. This is really fun. Good. I'm glad that you all have enjoyed this LChat. I love getting your feedback. So thank you for letting me know. All right. So if any of you have other mood boards that you want to share, I'm sure everyone else would love to see that as well. Skylar says, love how even your presentations are branded with your own colors. I have a thing for branding. I try to make them all blue so that you can make those associations with which one is which. So thank you. I'm glad that you appreciated that too. Any other questions on color? Let's see here. Did I cover it all? Anybody have questions about secondary color palettes too? That's something that I thought about after the fact, that some of you might have questions on and didn't include it in the presentation. But at the end, with talking about the dominant colors and the accent colors, that's where that secondary palette can really come in. So if you choose 6, 2 dominant, and then the 4 the accent colors. Any more? If not, I'll jump off early, and you can feel free to join in on that Slack group, share your work, share your mood board, share your questions. If you go back and watch the Find Your Focus webinar from last week, I have on the Ellen Company website, if you go to ellencompanydesign.com/LChat, I have 2 more LChats that have been from previous weeks that I recorded, and you can go in and see the content on those as well, and feel free to post to the Slack forum too, and post throughout the week. It doesn't just have to be on Thursday nights. Okay, great. I have a question. Kat Saunders says, hi, Lauren. Can't tell if my question came through. One of my dominant colors has always been minty green, but I'm worried about the readability of a soft color in the logo. Thoughts? It's a really Great question. Usually with a logo, especially with the logo text, I really try to focus on legibility. So if minty green has been one of your dominant colors, you might choose to include it in your logo somewhere else in the logo. So you might choose to make the font a little bit darker and bring in that minty green as a secondary color or an accent color, or bring it into the logo through another aspect of your logo as well. So a good way to tell too is if you size it down really small, usually to about an inch, and you're losing quality and legibility, then you either need to change the color or simplify the design. Your logo should be able to fit on, a tag, a clothing tag, and it should be able to be blown up on a billboard. That's a good quality of a logo, is just simplicity. And that also comes through in color. So if you're having trouble with legibility, I would suggest still keep that minty green to stay true to your brand, especially if that's attractive to your audience and that fits your brand well. But you might decide to make the logo a little bit darker. And if you want to, feel free to add it to our board and I'll take a look at it and I'll be able to give you a little bit better feedback. But thanks, Kat. I didn't see your question in there. Lauren Carnes says, what if you have two ideal clients / target audiences? That's something that we talked about in last week's chat just a little bit about finding your focus. If you're trying to appeal to two different audiences, you either need to find similarities in both to really to narrow your focus and really appeal to one or the other, because you might be losing one's attention if you're branding for one and not the other, and you can really make it confusing on your audience. So I would suggest if you have two clients or two target audiences, that you either try to narrow it down into one or you try to find the commonalities and similarities and brand for that. So I hope that that's helpful, Lauren. All right. How many colors, Melissa says, would you recommend to use in a logo? So usually I would say two dominant colors in a logo, the two main colors of your brand, and then about 4 accent colors that you could bring in through secondary colors. Usually the brands that I design have 1 to 2 colors. Sometimes if it works, I'll bring in a little bit more, but usually just the simpler, the better. So that's what I would recommend, Melissa. And if you look at some of the biggest brands, they're very simple in their colors as well. They just have usually 1 or 2 colors. All right. So Nicole left her logo on the Slack forum and said, I love these colors at first, but I think it's lacking something. One thing that I recognize, and I'll share my screen for those of you who aren't in the Slack forum just yet. So let me go back and I can share her logo with you. Let's see here. All right. Hopefully you can see my screen. Sorry for the tunnel vision. Okay, so this logo right here. So one of the things that stands out to me is the detail that you have in your logo. And one of the things that's really hard with all of these little dots and just details in your logo is that when you go to decrease them, they will start to get lost and you'll lose some of those details. So you might choose to simplify it a little bit more. If you have that gradient in there and you choose to keep that gradient, that could still come through, but keep the moon shape maybe and lose some of the details just to simplify it a little bit more. So when you downsize it, you keep the quality. And you might choose to not use the gradient or just choose one of those colors for the moon. Maybe give it some character still. I like how the hand-drawn qualities of this matches the font that you used, or even if that's your handwriting, I think it might be. So I like how that complements well, and then you have the regular type, but maybe just simplify it a little bit more and simplify the colors a little bit more too. I hope that's helpful for you. Great, so the questions are starting to come in. I love it. Skylar says, how do you edit yourself when using accent colors? I always seem to overuse my accent colors, but I'm afraid of it all becoming one note for the website and not the logo. So I would even rank your colors, and I'm going to switch it around here now. Um, I would kind of rank your colors in order of importance too. So I have my dominant colors. I use black really only for my logo and the text. But then for my website, I use a lot of different bright colors like blues and some like melon orangey reds and some purples. And so, but then for blog graphics, I have pinks and I have darker blues. So I would kind of rank it in order of importance and say, these are the colors and this is what it's going to be used for to create some consistency. So you might have those two colors that are used all the time. Then you might have two more secondary colors that you might use, secondary and as alternate colors, that secondary color palette. But then you use those, on a scale, use those a little less, but they're still being seen. And then maybe have just those pops of color that you don't use very often. You use sparingly two more colors that are further down on that list. So ones that you use all the time, ones that you use some of the time, and ones that you use rarely. That might help you narrow it down a little bit more. Also depends on your palette. If it's a complementary palette, then those pops of color are really going to stand out more. If it's something like a monochromatic palette, it might not matter quite as much. So it just depends. If you share it in the Slack forum, I'll be happy to take a look at it for you. Libby says, do the final images that are included in a website need to reflect the selected color palette, or is it okay if they include other colors as well? I'm so glad you said that. For your brand, it's not only through your logo or even the graphics on your website, it's also through your photography. So one way to really make your brand stand out and make it distinct is to use the colors that you've chosen in your brand also in your photography. And usually sometimes it'll include some other colors. So if green isn't a part of your logo, but you have plants in the photos that you're using, that's totally fine as well. So yes, if you include other colors, I would just make your brand colors very apparent within your photos too, without going overboard too much. But that's a great question. I might have a resource coming up for you that'll be very helpful for the visual side of things with photography as well. So keep that in the back of your mind, Libby. And then Kat just added her board as well too. So I'm going to share my screen again. Sorry for the back and forth. Hopefully you're enjoying seeing these two. All right. So here is a look at Kat's board. And she did a great job with balancing the lights and the darks here. So you see that we have the soft minty green, we have a mid-tone green that works really nicely here, a softer gray, and then we have this darker blue as well. And even here you can see that the photos she used incorporate some other colors, but the dominant colors really stand out. I'm seeing a lot of white and a lot of white space, but I'm seeing some of those mid-tone grays through the sweater, through the keyboard, through this print. I love that pattern. And then you see some of the darker blues in the bedding, in the jeans, even in this piece of artwork down here. So you can see that balance and it's visually pleasing. It isn't washed out. There's a good amount of contrast. So I think that this looks really nice. I love it. It's more of an analogous palette because it doesn't have any of those warm colors, but it works really well, especially because you created that contrast. So great work, Kat. I love this. I also love how you have consistency through the polka dots here and on the bedding as well. It's really fun. Thank you for sharing that. So Skylar has a color palette that she's been using for her ePortfolio website. So yes, this is a good example of a monochromatic palette. You see that she's working with blue. She's adding she's adding black to it to make it a little bit darker. And then she's adding a white to it to add some tints as well. So yes, and Skylar was the one I think earlier who was talking about adding her secondary colors or using her secondary colors too much. I think in your case with a monochromatic palette, that's not going to matter quite as much as it would if you were using a complementary palette. Great questions. This is fun to see these. Great. I'm going to stop sharing, go back and see if there's any other questions here. And Jamie, I'm so glad to see you in here. Jamie wrote a post on this in the collaborative not too long ago too. So on the two audiences thing. So you can go back and see that too. She also has some really great color resources. So be sure to check that out from Spruce Road. And great. So how are you guys creating those mood boards? Lauren asks. They look great. I know for me, I do it all within Illustrator. But if you have other ways that you're creating color palettes too, and you have resources for that, please add it to either the comment section here or the Slack forum. I'm sure that people would appreciate the resources. I know I'm running out of time right now, but like I said, if you have any other questions, if you want feedback, please feel free to use the Slack forum throughout the week. If you have other questions on blogging, business, or design, use the regular general channel and ask questions there. That's what it's there for. It's there to create more of a community and a network of creative online business owners. So I hope that you really find it helpful. I would love your feedback on this LChat and whether you found it helpful too. Feel free to use that Slack form again or send me an email or reach out to me on social media. I love hearing from you. We do have an LChat coming up, and let me pull that up for you just to make sure that I have my dates right. Let's see here. I know for the holidays coming up, it makes the schedule a little tricky. So I won't be having one next Thursday because it'll be Thanksgiving, but the upcoming one will be organizing content on your website. So we'll be talking about the layout of your website, the functionality of your website, how to organize all that content and make it make sense to your visitor. So if you're interested in that, go ahead and go to ellencompanydesign.com/LChat and you can register for the next event. It's going to be on Thursday, December 10th, again at 8 o'clock. If you can't make it, I'll be posting the recordings as well, but we would love to have you in there live, especially for the Q&A portion. That's probably my favorite. Thank you all so much for joining in. I hope that you have a great night. Best wishes with your color palettes, and I hope to see you again in another LChat sometime soon. Good night.